Live from the Sierra Room of the Doubletree by Hilton in beautiful downtown Aurora, Colorado. It says here on page 141, you're supposed to start with an attention grabber. And on page 142,
Robert's rules. Really?
stop querying my hamming up things to start with. My name is Rob Lapham. I'm a member of LP Texas. And we're going to be starting a bit late. We'll go ahead and compress this. I served as the volunteer executive director for LP Texas for, well, Pat originally said 6 months, and it turned out to be a bit over a year. We can't count too well. But in the process, I learned a few things about the business end of LP Texas. And today we're really going to follow more on what Carla just finished with in terms of fundraising and some other important stuff, which is the infrastructure, how to improve your business operations, at least how we're approaching it in LP Texas. You will take what you like and leave the rest. The first half is going to be, wait a minute, start. We will finish 59 minutes and 57 seconds from now. If anyone wants to stay for questions, that's fine, but we're going to finish on time from when we started. Nathan Kleffman will introduce himself, and we'll just get started. Okay.
Sounds great. So yeah, my name is Nathan Kleffman. I'm a manager in an IT consulting company where I've worked the last 6 years. The first 4.5 years I spent doing custom data cleansing, data quality, deduplication solutions. The last year I've been working with Salesforce. So right now I'm a solution architect for one of the biggest Salesforce implementations that are going on right now. And I'm also a longtime libertarian. Ran for state office for state representative in 2010, and blog about libertarianism at nathankleffman.com.
Excuse me, you do not need to take notes. There's a complete handout with notes. Take them if you want. What I would ask you to do, as you have questions, write them down, because we're going to go through this, and we're going to have a block for questions, and we'll answer anything. Do not feel obligated to take notes, although you're welcome to, sir. Go ahead. Excuse me, JJ.
So,
I heard that this morning.
So where are the notes?
They're here, but it has all the notes. It's not just the slides, it's the notes. If they give them to you, no, you're going to read them. No, they will give that. As you leave, you will have a full set, I guarantee you.
So CRM and how to pay for it, right? So the beginning is, what is CRM? We have a few definitions you'll find on Wikipedia that are pretty common industry terminology for CRM. Customer relationship management, a model for managing an organization's interactions with their current and future customers, how they kind of synchronize their sales, their marketing, their customer service. Most of us think of it as software though. Software that tracks everything about your leads, your contacts, your events, your fundraising, your members, your mass email campaigns. So again, typically for a normal for-profit corporation, what are they looking at? They're looking at, from their marketing side, how I get leads, how I work those leads, how I have campaigns that try to target those leads and look at how effective those campaigns are of being able to convert leads into customers, and then through the sales pipeline of saying that now I have a customer, how do I keep them happy customers, how do I upsell them to buy more of my products and help them from a customer relationship standpoint when they're unhappy with one of my products. So for the Libertarian Party, what does that mean? What are we selling? Well, why do we care about CRM? So, I'm in Colorado. South Park's kind of a libertarian friendly, so we'll get a little bit of a reference there, right? So phase one, we're looking to collect clean and accurate data about libertarians. Phase two, somehow though, phase three, we're going to profit from this information, right? But phase two, what it is, it's about fundraising. So, fundraising. Fundraising, that's what this is about, right? The law of numbers, ultimately, the more libertarians I can accurately identify, the more, law of averages, right? If my campaign's going to get 1, 5, 10%, the more I can target and send it out to, the more money I'm going to bring in. And the more I know about my libertarians, the better my campaigns can be. So rather than a one-size-fits-all, that every single email I send, I give them the same campaign, I want more targeted campaigns. So with the right amount of information about your libertarians that you know, I can have targeted campaigns and give them my top donors and give them a specific message saying, I appreciate you've been a top donor for this number of years, and I have a special project that I have just you in mind for. My longtime members, based on how your state party sets up your Libertarian Party, membership, do you have to donate once a year? And therefore, let me find the people whose membership is going to expire this month, so I can send them a targeted campaign to renew their membership. Also special events. And then, but fundraising is just, we're not just here to make profits, we're to take that money and then put it back into the organization. So ultimately, the party exists to support our candidates. So once we have all this information, this fundraising, and now we have information about our libertarians, the candidates should be able to benefit from this. So when I ran for state rep, I bought the voter list, kind of ran it through most of the data services, data mined it myself, but at the end of the day, a candidate should be able to go to their state party and say, I want to know all the libertarians in my district. I want to know the ones that are interested in activism, who's going to be interested in helping me do door-to-door walks, things like that. Ultimately then also county party support. So if your state Libertarian Party has a good CRM, then any county party should be able to say, give me all the information you have at the state level for the county, so we can be more effective. Because at the end of the day, right, the county party is where the rubber meets the road. It is sometimes more fun to run for statewide offices, but at the end of the day, we can probably do the most good and be the most effective at the local level. And then finally, activist support. So again, if I know something about my libertarians, and I know maybe even that what they're interested in, I see that they're interested in gun rights. So when they call up, I can say, actually, guess what? We have a pro-gun rights rally this weekend. Would you like to come work our booth? So these are the kind of things you can now do and be more effective just by understanding your data a little bit better. So the rest of this presentation is going to get into the case study that we're currently going through with Libertarian Party of Texas, where we're looking at where we're at today with our CRM and where we want to be in the future. And we're kind of looking at a couple different options. And a lot of the parties, I think, will benefit from this case study by reviewing the kind of process we've been going through, the questions we've been asking, and therefore what we're looking to change, and probably going to be running into some of the same issues, some of the same questions. Hopefully our thought process will help you go along on your journey as well. So let's just level set it where we are for LP Texas, some opportunities for improvement. Right? So in 2012, we had 1.3 million people vote Libertarian in the state of Texas. Our membership database has about 30,000 members. But when we send out an email, a newsletter, a fundraising campaign, about 5,000 people get it. So there's quite a gap in between these sets of numbers. Another opportunity for improvement would be kind of the conflicting information. So in a moment, we'll kind of see our current IT landscape, but depending on which system you're looking in, you're going to get a different answer. As our CRM, which is Sugar, is not integrated with our financial system of record, QuickBooks. So I'm a monthly donor, and yet if you look at Sugar, it says I haven't donated in over 1.5 years. So that's an issue. If I called up and someone answers the phone and thinks that I don't feel appreciated, right? If I know I'm donating every month and another system says something different, that's going to be an issue.
Nathan, can we comment on that slide?
Go ahead.
Okay, to restate part of what Nathan has said, last November, Texas had 5 candidates who received more than 1 million votes, and 2 of them received more than 1.3 million votes. Who are these people? One of them happened to be statewide. These are the statewide races, of course, we're talking millions of votes. One statewide, or actually 4 of the 5 of them were statewide judicial races, and one of them ran for railroad commissioner, which if you know anything about Texas, they control the world. It's not just railroads by a long shot. But the point is, you've got behind the curtain, and you can't see them, there's 1.3 million people are voting Libertarian on these particular, this is significant. And then you drop it back and say, how much you can't get inside the voting booth on voting day, and of course we shouldn't be able to anyway, it's a private decision. But we only know, we throw the number 30,000 there because we have just over 30,000 in our database. Now our data is not clean, like for example Ohio's, but there's probably only 20 to 25,000 real, because we haven't, people die, people move, all the usual things, change their addresses. So we dropped, and Latham is going to get into this, but I want to make the emphasis that 1.3 million vote Libertarian. We only know about some number less than 30,000 of them, and
we're only targeting 5,000 when we go for
our newsletter, going through a constant contact filter, whether because of unsubscribes or people just change their email address and stuff, that only goes out to 5,000. Another question is how many read it, but that's not the topic here. I'm sorry for interrupting. Go ahead, but he'll...
So a couple more opportunities for improvement is just the data structure, being thoughtful about how you map this data, right? So we should all be familiar with LNC sending us these data dumps, and they send us all kinds of great information. All the new members that went to lp.org, and they live in your particular state, and you get information about issues, candidate information, great stuff, as long as you can do something with it effectively, right? But what do we do with it? All that extra information, we kind of dump it in one big text area field. I can't sort it, I can't filter it, I can't make meaningful reports based off of it. It's going to waste, right? And then also about data integrity, because you can buy all the tools you want at the end of the day, but if you're not, purposely maintaining this data, I believe there's a study that we saw 40% of people 18 to 24 change their email or phone number once a year. So if you're not up to date on keeping that data, quickly, you get to our situation where you have 30,000 people in the database, but what good is that when only 5,000 people get the email at the end of the day? Right? You have to make sure that you're cleaning it from duplicates, as well as then just the data integrity going down over time. And so this is a chart that I found in a Gartner study, and what I'm trying to show here is that if we look at the top graph here of available customer data, we can think of that top line as the 1.3 million libertarians out there. Those are the libertarians that are out there somewhere that voted libertarian in Texas. Now our ability to analyze that middle line, that would be something like the 30,000 we have, right? And like Rob was saying, there's not much we can do to close that knowledge gap because we have secret voting. There's no way we can somehow find those 1.3 million people, so there's not much we can do about that. But the ability to use analysis, that bottom line, that would represent the 5,000 people that we actually get our newsletter to out the door. So this is the execution gap. That's where we have no excuse to try to close that gap, right? Between the data we come in and then being able to be good stewards of that data, keep it clean, keep it deduplicated, so that we can actually do something with it and effectively use it to, again, close that execution gap so it's non-existent if possible. So kind of the first kind of thing we do, right, is we want to define our terms. So we're all speaking the same language. So again, member. What is a member for your particular state? Because that's going to influence a lot of things once you make sure you define what a member is. It's going to impact your data structure, when you want to convert a lead to a member, what that process looks like. Also your deduplication logic, what makes a member unique. So for the purposes of example, LP Texas, we have two things that make you a member. And actually this is a voting member, right? So if you can actually vote in our state party, then you have to have two things. One, you have to sign an oath of affiliation. That's based on our party bylaw. But you can't have also voted in a Republican or Democratic primary. That's based on state law. So you can be a voting member, and you could be a donor. You could also be a non-dues paying. There's nothing that says you have to pay money to be a voting member. At the same time, you could be a member and then you give us money, but you're not eligible to be a voting member because you voted in for Ron Paul, for the Ron Paul Republican, let's say, but you still want to give money to the Libertarian Party. So you have to really understand, like, what do we mean by by member? What is on our party bylaws that make you a member? This will impact your decisions as what you're trying to set up an effective CRM. Now you want to define your processes. What is my as-is process? When I get a new lead, what do I do with that? When I get it from my own website, when they make a donation directly through my website, versus when I get a data dump through LNC, so yes, they might be a national, libertarian member, but they haven't joined my state yet, so they're still technically a lead for me. So what is my process for working these leads? Again, understanding your current process will help you understand what your new process will be in your new CRM. Same thing with processing a donation. I might have my monthly payments coming in. I might have my website donations coming through my website. Someone might call up and want to send me a check, send me a credit card. How do all those work today? The main point being, I want all of this synchronized with my CRM. Like I said before in my example, we don't want the situation where I've been donating every month, but someone picks up the phone and it doesn't look like I've donated in a year and a half. We want to get our CRM in sync with our financials. Even if they're not the same system of record, they need to be in sync at least on a weekly basis. And this is not a joke. This is the current LP Texas donation process. Obviously, I'm not going to drill through all of these, right? But the point being that even though this seems kind of crazy, it's very helpful to have someone go through the process of documenting this so you know where you're at today. So I have to know that on the left here, what I'm looking at is all the ways donations come in to LP Texas through Pyrex, PayPal, credit cards, checks, cash, even donations in kind. They want to give us a bag of silver, we're more than happy to take it. We have a process for that as well. It goes through this spider matrix here, and eventually, somehow, it gets to one of our CR, either gets to Sugar, it gets to, we have a Linux-based LP Texas data tables is what it's called. We have our Sugar CRM, and then we have QuickBooks as our financial system of record. So again, we can do better than this, right? I mean, at the end of the day, what we'd like to have is something that would show, my system of truth, my single financial system of truth. And when a donation comes in, the only question to ask is, based on my definition of who a member is, do I find that member existing today in my CRM? If not, create them, associate the donation to them. Otherwise, associate the donation to the member I found. It should be that simple. It should be, couple boxes here, 2 lines, 3 lines, not what we have today. So room for improvement. So now that we've kind of gone through again, defining my terminology for what a member is for my state, what are my current processes, we've kind of landed on what are my must-have requirements for my new CRM. So for us, a must-have requirement is that we have to start off correct. Right? We have to start off with data that's clean, deduplicated, and enhanced. So what does deduplication means? Like depending on your party, you might be able to just do that with someone with decent Excel skills, and they just manually go through and deduplicate it. You can also go to companies like Melissa Data Services, the one I used when I bought the voter list myself when I was a candidate, and they'll do things like deduplication based on rules you give them. They'll also do data enhancement, like give you the phone numbers and the email addresses of who you went with. So you want the first. Melissa Data Services is one example. There's a lot of Melissa Data Services, but there's
Melissa, melissa.com.
It's owned by Ray
And-
Melissa, the libertarian.
What's that?
It's owned by Ray Melissa, he's actually a libertarian.
Did not know that.
Cool.
I'm glad I went to that company then. So that's the first thing, is starting off correctly, right? Now the next thing is that going forward, your CRM needs to be able to keep your data clean, right? So that means deduplication, you have to think about that. So when someone goes to my website and makes another donation, what if they use their work address this time instead of their normal address that they use? What if there's been a life event and their maiden name is changed to a new last name? So on the one hand, there's 2 different philosophies on duplication. On the one hand, you can just say, give me the rules of what makes a member unique, and if I find that, then just associate it with them. But sometimes it's not always that clear cut, so maybe I just want to flag them as a duplicate, and once a week someone goes in and looks at the duplicate report, and they make a human decision of, are these 2 people the same people? Should I merge them together in my CRM and make all of them connected as one? Maybe I need to give them a call and make sure, you are the same John Smith that used to live on 123 Main Street, and now you just moved, right? Okay, good. Wanted to make sure. So we have to be able to handle duplicates going forward. We need the ability to convert a lead into a member. And again, this is going to be based on our terminology at the beginning. What is a lead versus a true member? Again, based on your state, your bylaws and all that. And finally, we want to be able to synchronize financial and donation information. So we didn't say that it must be the same system of record, because our financial system of record needs to be able to do things like put out income statements, profit and loss. We have Texas Ethics Commission reports that need to be pumped out for everyone that donates more than $50. So we don't think we can, so it doesn't have to be in the same system of record, but at the minimum they need to be synchronized in a timely manner. That it shouldn't take 1.5 years to make it understood that I'm a monthly member, a monthly donor, that kind of thing. So now we have our must-have requirements. So now we're going to kind of look at 2 options. So there's many other CRMs out there, but based on my professional experience, that's why I work with the Salesforce. They're also the industry leader in cloud CRM solutions. And we're going to kind of compare that to Libertas Web Services, where they're a new company that's built by libertarians for libertarians. I kind of compare kind of the 2 ends of the spectrum, how they could meet our must-have requirements for our new CRM. And just to state the fact, LP Texas did look at Salesforce before. We experimented a little bit with it back in 2010, I believe.
Beginning of 2011.
Beginning of 2011, and the question is, why didn't it work before? And so I would answer that by a few things. One was that, I believe you went to a road show and kind of saw all that Salesforce can do, talked to a salesman, and do they have LP's best interest in mind? Probably not. So you didn't have someone that both understood Salesforce and also wanted to see Libertarian Party get, the cheapest solution possible that would meet the must-have requirements. Because, you can see, so in terms of like the roadshow, you can see Salesforce where they call you up, they use CTI, and automatically your member record pops up in Salesforce. That's really cool. But do you have to have it? Do you have to spend, is that a must-have requirement, or was that a nice-to-have requirement? So that gets back to, again, the philosophy of I want to get the cheapest licensing that I can to meet my must-have requirements. And especially it's helpful if you have someone, maybe like myself, that understands Salesforce and can help do customization and get more with less using creative workarounds to avoid the big expensive licenses and do more with less. So here we just have an example, right? Sure, I could get the $250 a month per user license, but if I can get everything I need, my must-have requirements, with the $10 or $25 per user per month license, then obviously that's the way I should go to, because you can always start off with the less and always upgrade later. You'll always be happy to upgrade your license later on. So first let's figure out, at least from the Salesforce perspective, do more with less. And then I believe, speaking to Libertas, that they're willing to work with any state party depending on the state party's needs, what they're really looking for in making package solutions based on your needs. So now let's say I've figured out my licensing, what I'm going to be doing. Now again, getting back to cleaning my existing data, manual or automated. Do I have a small enough membership, database that I can just spend some time in Excel and Access and do it all manually? Or is it past that line and maybe I want to, have a professional do it? Again, I could contact a company like Melissa Data Services. I'll tell them, here's my rules, I want you to deduplicate it, and I also want you to enhance the data. I want you to give me your version of the latest phone number, the latest email address. It's pretty affordable to get your data up to tune like that. And then same thing though, Salesforce.com, they have data.com for that type of thing. Libertas uses Aristotle. There's probably another dozen companies out there that offer these type of services. So now that I've got my data clean and enhanced, now how am I going to keep it clean? So like I talked about before, deduplication. So Salesforce, looking at this, Salesforce has their app exchange, and there are a ton of free apps that any organization can download that will handle their deduplication for them. And same thing, you just kind of configure it based on your rules. So again, do I want it to prevent me from creating a duplicate? Maybe in some situations I do. Maybe if I'm manually entering a new member, I want to see that, oh wait a second, based on phone number and email, here's 2 other people that might be the same entry, and prevent me from creating the record first. Versus, I get an LNC data dump, right? In that case, maybe I just want them to flag the possible duplicates so I can go revisit it later and then make a human decision about who's really a duplicate, who's not, who just happens to have the same phone number or what have you. And to speak again to Libertas, they also have duplication out of the native to their infrastructure that both handles the beginning load as well as records that come in over time, and also bulk loads before the LNC data dump. So now again, getting new records into my CRM. So again, if I'm found if everyone do it manually, then am I really gaining much from going from maybe an Excel or Access database solution to moving to a Salesforce? I would argue not really. You really want to be able to get some of these things automated. So especially whenever someone's making a donation or fills out a form for my website, I want that automatically in my CRM. I want to automatically deduplicate it and finding the existing record if possible. So I can have less and less manual things that must be done. So, from the Salesforce perspective, there's paid apps that help you connect your website to Salesforce. One's called a Form Assembly. I think they charge $40 a month. But there's also ways to do it out of the box, but you do require someone that knows a little bit about Salesforce and can do a little bit of coding. There's a group called Texans for Accountable Government. They're a political action committee in Texas. I set up for them a Salesforce org, and I found a way to use the web to lead, which is an out-of-the-box functionality that's free for Salesforce. I was able to hook up their forms to use that, and then wrote a little piece of code that took them from the lead and put them into members and did the deduplication. So again, if you have someone like that, then you can do it for free. Otherwise, you look in the App Exchange for ways that you can get it done cheap. And again, Libertas, to me, where they really shine is that they offer an all-in-one CRM plus CMS. So they're doing your website front end, but then also maintain your CRM back end. So where I have the difficulty figuring out how am I going to cheaply make Salesforce integrate with my website when they're 2 separate things, with this it's all in one. Right? You go through your Libertas hosted website, the donation comes in, it's automatically in your CRM, automatically deduplicated. And that's from the website. So same thing like I said with the LNC data dump, or let's say I get a group from a meetup list of the people that are for some other one issue alliance that I'm working with. If I want to bulk load that into my CRM, it should automatically handle these things like deduplication. So now again about showing me the money, getting my financials into my CRM. So again, the decision is going to have to be, is the volume low enough that it makes sense to just do it manually? That every time I have my financial system of record over here, it does what it needs to do, and just once a week we migrate it over. So you could do it manually. You could do real-time integrations where you're having it completely hands-free. That is going to be a little bit more complex. You either need to have a volunteer that understands how to code, or to hire someone or to pay for one of these apps they'll do it for you. Or also there's free options. Maybe again, is a weekly synchronization enough, a weekly batch job. Some of these free apps here from the App Exchanges are all free ones that I could set up a weekly batch job where it pulls a report out of my financial system of record and then loads it into my CRM once a week. That's an option. But then again, same thing with Libertas where, with Libertas, it's all in one, it's automatically synchronized. And so this is this topic on the decision about whether to rely on volunteers versus to decide to raise the money, as Rob's going to talk about, and then pay for it yourself. Because volunteers are great, but if I decide to take on being Salesforce and build Salesforce for Libertarian Party of Texas, the question is, what if I get hit by a bus? What if I decide to join the Republican Party, to equally horrible scenarios? What happens in that case? Where does that leave the party? Because sometimes with a volunteer, you get what you pay for. You can't control them. Maybe think of it a risk analysis, right? I can say that, Pat, I'm going to give you 10 hours a week to work on this new CRM. I might change my mind, and now you're stuck with my promise and what's that going to give you? So again, this is just the philosophy of sometimes it's worthwhile to hire a professional and get it done right, especially when you can see the benefits that a first-class CRM can bring you. So this kind of brings me to the case study conclusion. Not sure where I highlighted on time with this, but again, from my perspective, Salesforce.com, with a little work, a little research, a little time, you can find a very affordable way for Salesforce to meet all of your must-have requirements. Plenty of free apps out on the App Exchange to do things that wouldn't necessarily require someone that needs to be able to understand coding, but you need to be somewhat familiar with similar technologies probably. But again, Salesforce is very easy to pick up. There's a lot of free videos, tutorials online, things like that. And then with Libertas, to me, it really shines because it is CRM plus CMS means one integrated solution. It means one system of record. All the complexities of getting things integrated and worrying about this system over here being out of sync with this system, that kind of goes away. And to me, that's a big winner, and it's for me my recommendation for LP Texas. It also has all kinds of benefits I didn't even get to here. A lot of things I probably would have considered nice to have, but they just bring them on there, whether it is a shared database with your county parties, event tracking, so you have an event like this, the website can show, oh, here's your early bird tickets, automatically takes you down to the normal tickets, and now in your CRM you know that these people are the ones that paid extra money for it and they went to the event. You can follow up with them later, thanking them, that type of thing. And my final disclaimer, again, I don't work for Salesforce, I don't work for Libertas. These are just my opinions. I'm the one responsible for these opinions. And if you are interested in talking about a Salesforce solution, I'm happy to try to volunteer my skills to libertarians, so feel free to ask me about it or contact me, and you also have my contact information. At this point, I believe, I'll talk about how to pay for a first-class CRM.
Sure. Thanks, Nathan. Nathan and I have been working together for quite some number of weeks, analyzing both systems, he from a professional viewpoint, being on the inside, me from being a user for a short period of time just a couple of years ago. And then we both have taken a look and drilling down at Libertas. And there are many reasons why we both came to the conclusion that for LP Texas, Libertas is head and shoulders for us in our application. It doesn't mean necessarily apply to you, but I'm just telling you where we're coming from. I want to change gears now, because any technology solution that you don't now have, if, for example, your total state membership is, I heard $400 in Carlos, 400 members from someone in the last session, and if that's your size, maybe you can run the whole thing on a spreadsheet and handle it manually, okay? And we have something that you can't handle manually anyway. You've got to have the right systems in place. And so I do want to talk about how to pay for it. And Nathan has, by pressure of time, had to run through some things pretty quickly, which is why we have a handout, so there's an opportunity to go through, and you'll be able to call either Nathan or myself, or see us tomorrow or anytime. But how do you pay for it? And the question logically arises, what kind of numbers are we talking about, folks? Well, I'll tell you what we're not talking about. And the Salesforce model is different than the Libertas model. The Salesforce model is based on a monthly payment for each user who's administering the system, not each person who may be blogging on it and so forth. And the Libertas model has an upfront cost and virtually no continuing cost. The Libertas model is kind of like buying a new car with a warranty, and that's a big expense. But after that, you just pay for the gas and put in oil every so often. So the ongoing expense in the Libertas model is pretty nominal. And I'm not talking about $100,000, and I'm not talking about $50,000, and I'm not talking about $25,000 upfront cost. But beyond that, where do you fit in going down to $5,000? Where do you fit in a range? And the answer is it depends on the size of the party and what you need from Libertas. So don't be concerned about the number. I'll just say it's way less than $25,000, because even Texas, which has the most needs, in my opinion, isn't spending anything like that. Okay, I'd like to have a bit of fun before we get to how we're going to pay for it. And we're going to have a little skit. And I have a question. And that is, which of you would like to be an instant multimillionaire? That is, before you leave this room this afternoon, please raise your hand if you would like to be an instant multimillionaire. Okay, a lot of people. Carla, you did the last session. You're the volunteer. Come on up. Brett, please come on up. I want you to present the award. And I have actually not, I attended her session, a piece of this one, and also when she's talking in the game next door, but I have never met Carla. Carla, you are now Mrs. John Smith, Joanna Smith, for the skit. Do you know what we're going to do here?
No, I don't.
Neither do I.
I'm really concerned.
That's okay. It's dead easy. Okay, I'd like you to come over here. We're going to sit down and do a little thing like on you in a chair. But as soon as Brett shows it, yes, it will be the next slide. Have a seat, please. And then we're going to get up almost immediately. The LSLA chair has a new job too. He is the chair of the My State Lottery Commission, and congratulations, Mrs. Jones. He is going to present you with a check for $10 million. So let's have, please get up now. And I would like you two to face the camera. The IRS is recording this. Please face Victor. And you are now a multimillionaire. Because now it's made out to John Smith. I didn't know who I was going to pick. But I assume, Joanna, you will take care of that when you get home with your husband, right?
Sure.
Okay, so you are, for the purposes of this skit, also a multimillionaire. Thank you, Mr. LSLA Chair.
Very welcome. I love my new job. I like giving lots of money.
Mrs. Smith, that is yours to keep. So we're going to sit down here and have a dialogue with this new multimillionaire. Okay. Joanna, congratulations. I imagine your lifestyle is going to undergo quite a significant change with the $10 million before taxes. It's still, however many taxes, is still a significant amount. What do you think you can do with money? Just off the top of your head. Sure.
I'll be looking for libertarian campaigns down there too.
I don't have much of a job here at all. Let's suppose that she had said, I'm going to go on a cruise, I'm going to buy houses for the kids and all those kind of things that we might do as libertarians. But then I'm going to ask you, actually I'm going to share with you a piece of information. Mrs. Smith, I have been working on a project for the Libertarian Party of Texas for a couple of years, and with others we have come to a conclusion that the single thing that would help us, the two single things that would help us most grow our party, grow our membership, grow our revenues, and be able to better serve candidates, serve activists, serve our county chairs, is a combination of two things. We desperately need an executive director to manage all of this, as opposed to all the volunteers, and we also need a technology infrastructure to leverage the executive director's ability to work with, in our case, many thousands of libertarians, and we want tens of thousands more. So that's the basic thing. And in our particular case, we need so much technology that I need $16,250 to implement that technology. And I'm talking with you today as a wealthy individual, and would like to know if this is something that we might discuss. And of course, I understand from you a minute ago, you understand a bit about, first of all, the multimillionaire is a libertarian, okay? He certainly has a general understanding of what even, I may not know what degree libertarian, but I know you have a libertarian philosophy and now you're rich. Is there a basis that we could discuss you funding this specific project? We will? Okay. So if I can, and we can stop right here, but if I can lay out a plan and tell you what the specific benefits will be to us, and that you, Mrs. Smith, are responsible for funding it, I'll go a stage further. You may want to check with John Smith. We will call the system the Smith. And 2 years from now, when people say, where did you get that piece of information? Oh, I got it off the Smith. If you would like to be immortalized on every single frame on the computer, we will do that, and that's your decision. I mean, I'll work on the state chair, so we don't, so forth. So, thank you very much for agreeing to this pledge, and I'll get back to you later and we'll firm up the details. Thank you very much.
I just want to know it's going to work. And you're not going to put my name on it? It's full bucks.
Okay, I can make that commitment. Your name will not be on it until you have seen it. It'll be in operation. And frankly,
Do I have to give all the money before
yes,
we?
because we have to pay the vendor to get the job done, okay? But I will tell you this, it would be my expectation that you, as a very wealthy libertarian now, if we don't deliver, we will have other needs in the future, and I don't feel I have the right to come back to you, and even if I did, you would be fully
I
justified.
was just thinking the same thing.
Well,
If this system works and it flies, my checkbook is wide open to you. I want to see it work, I want people to say it's working, and you got my support.
thank you very much, because there are 49 other state libertarian parties out there, and someone was speaking in the previous session about dollar match, and just as a concept, okay, if you would be willing, possibly together with other wealthy libertarians, what was the other thing that was discussed? It would be a, I won't go into
Matching?
You can, yeah,
Well,
you can
it certainly is
consider it,
matching, but
you
there's
haven't
several ways to do
specified,
Yeah.
you haven't specified,
Now, we're talking targeted donations, I'm going to come back to this, but in other words, I did not say to Mrs. Smith here, when she might have asked, well, why are you a libertarian, Rob? And I might have said, well, and this is true, I am a libertarian for the benefit of my great-grandchildren and future generations that I will never meet. For me, that's a passion, I want to do something for the future, and I'll never live to see it. That's my own opinion. That doesn't cut any ice with her because, or it might, but it doesn't necessarily because I haven't told her something that she can latch onto, this specific result. We're talking direct-to-purpose donation here. So far as she knows, if I said, Mrs. Smith, I need $16,250 for a very good cause for my great-grandchildren, as far as you can see, it's money going down a rat hole. I mean, what you know, and so I haven't made a specific, the argument. I'm going to come back to this. But Mrs. Smith, thank you very much for your kind donation, and please accept this small token of whatever.
Got it, thank you.
Thank you for participating in our little thing. Okay, so this is something, we just wanted to kick it off before we get serious here. You really can keep it if you want. I'm not sure what I'm going to, I don't know if it fits under the seat in front of me or any overhead compartment.
Stay out of jail, donate most of this to the IRS.
Sure. We can pass it around tomorrow if you want. I mean, it is yours, literally. I meant
See the
that.
van white? Nice prop, you guys.
Sure, next slide. Where's the next slide? Let me get caught up here. Okay. Now let's get serious. Okay, so the first quote there happens to be my favorite quote. And all we're going to talk about now is how to raise money, what works and doesn't work. And I'm talking maybe larger amounts, but that's fine. I'm not going to talk about persistence. It's in your handout. And it's kind of along the lines of the first person you ever ask for a donation says no. From a salesman's perspective, every no is one closer to a yes. Don't give up. Ask yourself why the person said no. Could you improve your dialogue with that person? I'll come back to it if we have time, but I want to make sure that we take time for the important points. In my opinion, Pat Dixon and Wes Benedict, whose names I have selected because many of you know those two people, and one of them is sitting in the room here, that's one of the characteristics, the evidence, as to why they succeed in pulling donations, large donations. Let me distinguish this part. I'm going to focus more on obtaining large amounts of money from wealthy libertarians. And everything Nathan's been talking about includes how to increase your revenue flow from the $10, $25, $50, $100 in recurring donations. He's talking about the most of our money, but you want money from all sources you can get, so I'm going to focus more on the big ticket. The system is focused on your average donor, and this is a one-on-one personal effort. So one reason, in my opinion, Pat Dixon succeeds, there are several, is he's persistent. He's also been a libertarian since he was in college 100 years ago. Well, 40 years ago? How many years ago, Pat? When were you in college?
84 is when I
Okay.
joined.
94, 04, 14, so 30 years, right? Anyway, no one can ask Pat a question about libertarian philosophy if that's what the wealthy donor wants, the prospective donor wants to talk about. He's lived it, done it, and so on. So he's not saying, oh gee, what was the answer? He lives it. Well, we can't all develop that overnight, but let's assign a value to somebody who knows libertarian is not just the philosophy, our state governance structure and so on, if he's talking to a Texas multimillionaire. And same as with Wes Benedict. I may come back to this, but and Pat will correct me if I'm wrong, it's before my time. I lived in Alaska for 35 years before I moved to Texas 3 years ago. I don't know the background. But I think Wes Benedict set up the person who became our largest donor in Texas, who donated on the next executive director's watch, $100,000 in 2009, and then he went matching and said, I'll give you $150 dollar for dollar match. Every dollar, I'll give you $150. This is not small change, folks. I think Wes Benedict was responsible for that. Okay. I may come back later to something. Well, I'll tell you one thing that Pat did. I met with a multimillionaire in Texas a month after I took the executive director job, and I had a conversation. I got FaceTime with him, and I sat with him, kind of like Carla and I were just thinking, and he asked me the question. He said, why are you a libertarian? I didn't know what he was going to say. I gave him a great-grandfather thing, because that's true. But I didn't tell him what I would do with a donation he might give me. This is part of the answer on how you get money from wealthy libertarians, and I'm going to come back to it. Pat Dixon gets hold of this individual 3 weeks ago, and he's turned from a non-donor into what we call a platinum member, and there's more coming. I'm telling you, it's not just Pat's persistence, it's not just his knowledge, but it was my inexperience that didn't get the money and Pat did. Don't assume because you don't get a wealthy donor to give you money that it's because the donor can't be persuaded to do that. You kind of got to ask yourself, do I think I did everything right? Could somebody else have maybe done better? I'll come back to this, but I don't want you to feel disappointed when Mr. or Ms. many millions of dollars person says, I don't think so. Or they usually say, I'll think about it, and they never heard from them again. I've been doing a little bit of this, but at a small level. Slide, please. Oh yeah, I love this. I mentioned a specific amount of money which will get Texas everything it needs in terms of Libertas, which is more than any other state organization is going to need. Now, one of the details. The price tag for Texas is a bit higher, because I've asked them to do some things that are not on their standard menu, and they'll do them all. But. So, I got so excited Tuesday morning of this week, the 14th of May, 2013, because I'm talking to a person a libertarian of wealth, and what I get back from this individual is, oh, yeah, that makes sense. He said, I'm sold on that. I don't know how much I'm going to give you. I need to think about it. But I'm turned on. You're going to get a donation. This person can afford, wouldn't even miss the money. You may pay for all of it. I got so excited. I'm in the flow, or the zone. And do we all understand what that is? Okay, see, so my sister's a painter. She said they paint themselves when anyway, it's the excess energy and so forth. And I sit down and write 5 pages on stuff which I attach to the back of this thing. You can read it later. But, and it's all about the topics we're talking about, but laid out in a rational manner as opposed to Nathan and I barreling through this thing at high speed. Because I'd like you to be able to, at your own leisure, digest what's being represented by either of us, and then ask us questions tomorrow, next week, doesn't matter. You have our phone numbers and email addresses. Slide, please. So, keying on Nathan's fascination with South Park, which I have to admit I don't watch, but let's look at 3 different kinds of people who may or may not be willing to part with amounts of money. And there's 3 totally different scenarios. And going after libertarians for donations is quite different. And if you understand the dynamics in play with the others, it may help understand what I think turns on wealthy libertarians. Joe here, I don't know what his real name is, maybe you do. I don't know who Joe is.
Carter.
Gardner?
Carter.
Carper.
Cartman.
Cartman. Okay. Cartman here is the chief executive officer of a medium-sized company. I don't know, $1 billion a year, maybe it's a large company. It's public. He's on the NYSE or some stock exchange. And I say to him, Cartwright? No, Cartman, sorry. Cartman, I need $5 million. And he says, why? And I tell him. He makes his decision on $5 million on 2 pretty simple things. One is ROI, return on investment. If I give you $5 million, when am I going to get back $10 million? Is it 2 years, 5 years, whatever? There's a number, it's a measurement, return on investment. And the other component is risk. What are the chances that you won't do it? What are the chances that your great idea falls flat on its face and I lose the whole $5 million? But those are the essential elements for a commercial transaction. And that's how you're going to get or not get $5 million from this type of donor. Okay, who's Mary? She's the real, who is Mary? I don't know.
That's Tweak.
Tweet?
Tweak.
Tweak, okay. So Tweak,
Mary. No. Which one?
I'm throwing names, I don't know who people are.
Wendy. That's Wendy.
Wendy, okay. So, hey Wendy, now Wendy is, she is a multi-millionaire. She doesn't have to be libertarian, she's just a very wealthy person. And I say, Wendy, I need $5 million for some project. And I'll get to what the project is, but I've just been through a similar exercise. And she's motivated certainly by ROI and risk, as a CEO of a public company is, but there's a new element in play. Now, it may work better with a male than a female, but I'll take it as it is, because if I say Mary, the new factor in play is ego. And if I can say to Mary, with this investment, you're going to be on the cover of Forbes, you're going to be acknowledged as the founder of the next Facebook, and I paint this picture. And I tend to want to think of a guy rather than a woman, because I don't think women are necessarily as susceptible to us males. But just imagine the situation where you are, any of you are very wealthy, and you decide, hey, this looks like a good bet. I might lose some money, but it looks fairly okay to me. And ROI and risk is in there, but it's not necessarily that important. But it is important for my friends and my wife and my kids and anybody else I can think of to see me on Forbes. Gee, Dad, you're famous. And to have the Wall Street Journal write me up as the next Mark Zuckerberg or whatever. It's an ego, it's a dynamic issue there. Now let's take $50,000 from Joanna Smith, and I want $50,000. I told you before, I don't need this amount of money for this project, but we're just making examples, $5 million, $5 million, $50,000. And Joanna Smith is a wealthy libertarian, she's a multimillionaire, and I want $50,000 from her for some LP Texas project. What do any of you think is the easiest person to sell the fastest? Do I get $5 million from him first, or $5 million from her first, or $50,000 from Joanna Smith? What do you guess? Any answers? Any thoughts? Okay, it's an impossible question. Oh, Victor, no, you're just adjusting the camera. I thought you were raising your hand. Well, the bottom line answer is it's a crapshoot, because you have to ask other questions to see who's going to trigger first. But I will tell you, it is just as easy to get $50,000 from Joanna Smith as it is $5 million, which I just did on a commercial transaction. Now, this is opinion, you don't have to accept it, but I want to tell you what happened, because I would like everyone who leaves this room tonight to think, I can get a large donation if I have the right reason. I'd like you to believe that, because I believe that. Slide, please. So, this happens to be a company in Alaska in which I have a stake. I went out 6.5 weeks ago on Monday, April 1st, with an elevator speech cheat sheet. You can leave the camera where it is, we don't mess about. And this is also a handout you can take home. And this is, it says, oh, by the way, I look up in Forbes. I live in a suburb of Houston. It says there's 75 millionaires in Houston and 18 billionaires. Now, it's mostly all energy money, but as far as I know, it's second only to Silicon Valley in terms of concentrated wealth. Or maybe Manhattan, but whatever. A lot of rich people there. And Dallas and so forth. I want $5 million. Why? To kick off what is, in my opinion, going to be the next Facebook. My partner said, Rob, we'll get the money. We waited 11 years to get U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, intellectual property protection, and there are a bunch of other reasons why we took a long time for this great thing to happen. I won't describe it, it's described in here. So, I needed $5 million. 3 weeks after I started, I stopped, and the reason I stopped is because today we are in negotiation with a public company whose revenues are over $1 billion a year, and they want to buy us. They're not opposed to investing $5 million to kick this thing off big time, but they would prefer to buy us. And we're saying, I get 70 years old later this year, I'm thinking, for my vote, I'm just going to say, this might be a good idea to go ahead and match up. But I have 4 other partners. We're working on that. Right now there's an information transfer going on to this company, because they said it, and they don't believe it, but rather than not saying anything, they said, prove it. love it, just the exact same. So there's an information transfer going on what this company does and why it's going to make a killing in a very few years. And you'll see that in the thing. Okay, next slide. To recap, in the commercial world, ROI and risk. With wealthy individuals, ego, and with wealthy libertarians, persuading them to donate to your LP may be something quite different. And I like the directed purpose donation model. It's not the only way you can express it. But let's focus on this, because that's what we're talking about, folks, is how do you get money from wealthy libertarians for libertarian causes? Next slide, please. So, directed purpose donation. Joanna Smith, $16,250 for hers, nothing, you know, she got her millions. So, when you have a directed purpose donation in your state LP, in my opinion, it's a hell of a lot easier to get money from wealthy because they know exactly what you're going to do with it. And she said, if you don't prove it, that if you don't accomplish the objective, she's not going to give us any more. The reverse of that is if you do what she said, she's willing to give us lots more. Maybe she'll help fund the other 49 state LPs and do a $1 match or something. I don't know. That's what I'm getting off the thing. The other approach is what relationship do you evolve with the prospective donor? Do you play golf with this wealthy person? Do you see them socially? Maybe not, but you might. In Pat's case, he doesn't play golf with the multimillionaire, and I don't think he sees him socially. He's building a relationship nonetheless, and it's based on his credibility and his persistence and the belief in this multimillionaire that Pat's a straight shooter, can be trusted, and that he's not just a platinum donor, he's going further. I won't go further. It's the kind of thing for individual discussions with state LP chairs or whatever. And this is just a presentation today. I'm going to make an offer at the end of this thing to any state LP chair if I can help. On the phone, I'm not flying off to wherever. But anyway, let's go on because we need to. Where am I? Okay, where? So now I got time for questions, and we've got 9 minutes and 13 seconds left. Anyone who had a question for either Nathan or me, feel free to ask it. And now I'll go ahead and pass out a takeaway.
I have a question.
Yeah, have you used the Big L solutions, or even in the somewhat distant past, Stuart Flood's
Sure.
ballot box as a CRM?
Excuse me, Congressman. Let me address that question. Big L Solutions underwent a change on January the 23rd this year. Brett Pajunas, who was the face of Big L Solutions, we're talking the same thing, Libertas. From January 23rd this year, the visionary behind Libertas, the person who thunk it up, not the person who sold it, but the person whose idea it is, and the system architect who has actually built it, we've seen it working and we've been testing it, is sitting behind you. Jillian Mack, stand up, LP Ohio. So, the reason Jillian knows exactly what we need, in part, is she's run for Congress on the Libertarian ticket. She's a member of the LP Ohio Central Committee. She's been the former finance director. I don't know, you tell them, but you don't have to tell them now, but she's been there and done that, okay? She knows what Libertarian parties need because she's done it. And she and her system architect, who happens to be in Richmond, Virginia, but these days the location doesn't make any difference, have built this thing. And it works. And if anybody wants a user-level introduction, I'll send you the Dropbox link to a 32-minute demonstration from both the state and the county level that was produced by Ben Smelling, your architect, for an IT department meeting in Round Rock, Texas, on March the 16th. As our whole IT department, we got a whole group working on what Nathan and I are sharing with you, and they're all looking at this stuff. To answer your question, the Big L Solutions is not functional. Big L Solutions has no interest in Libertas anymore. The thing has been split.
Okay, but its function, how Big L functions,
Well,
and
my
how
understanding.
Libertas functions, what are the differences?
Okay. Brett has not, I've sent emails and left voicemails for Brett. I just haven't heard from him. I don't have a hard answer, but my understanding is the Big L Solutions is now limited to a subset, which is the call center. So if you're looking for an organization to do fundraising for you and work on results, piece the action, that type of thing, I think Brett is the person to talk to. That's not within the Libertas definition. So, but you asked me what is Big L Solutions. Call them and find out. BigLSolutions.com. I just haven't connected with Brett.
Yeah, no,
We've been dealing with
I'm
Julie.
looking at what you see as the differences between the two.
Oh, there is no difference. Big L Solutions, none of Libertas is in Big L Solutions. Big L Solutions no longer has any right, title, or interest to Libertas.
Change in ownership. No, I'm not looking at changing, I'm looking at functionality.
is what he's asking.
Oh, Big L Solutions,
There is no
that's in my
difference.
knowledge, will tell you how to fundraise. Or will fundraise for you. Big L Solutions doesn't have. I'm sorry, Jillian, would you speak to that?
Doesn't have a software solution.
It's Libertas. Libertas has the software.
Okay.
It's just a change in ownership and name change, essentially.
Brett's interest was in fundraising. Jillian's interest was in a system infrastructure. They agreed, their interests were diverging, and they agreed to split the totality of what they had.
Okay.
So, and I'll be glad that, she knows more than I do, so talk to her afterwards, because I'm not trying to, if I don't know it. So, next question, please, because we want to.
Right, yeah, in North Carolina, we have
Sure.
3 different databases we work with. One comes from Robert Krause,
Yeah.
one we have kept up locally on the state, and one's from the Board of Elections. And we need to merge them all together.
Yeah.
What's the best way of doing that?
Well, just on the limited information you've given me, I'd be doing Libertas there as well. And I'll tell you right now, our truth right now is QuickBooks, regardless of how it comes in through website or someone walking in with a check, that's where we record it. The data goes out on a CSV file to a Unix-based system called LP Texas Data Tables, which is a legacy system, been there forever. When they've done their thing, another CSV file goes out and is uploaded to a Sugar CRM, which is our contact database, which a single staff person uses. Somebody calls up, which I key it in, oh, hi, Mr. Jones, and whatever the conversation is, but I see you donated $50 last month, thanks very much. She knows who she's talking to. The result looks good, but as Nathan said, he increased his donation last year from $25 to $50, and you can go into that end product, well, until last week, Sugar, and it tells you he stopped donating in February 2012. That spaghetti diagram you saw, there's all kinds of holes in it and single points of failure. The treasurer, who maintains QuickBooks, the adequacy of his report structure, and it goes through this thing. So you've got 3 different databases, and there's potential for failure. Do you have a comment on that?
Well, how I'd answer the question is, again, at a high level, you say you have 3 databases, and that's your as-is. In the future, maybe you want to reconcile them to one system of truth, right?
Yes.
So what would I do? I would first, one, you have to have the game plan of how that's going to happen, but then once you're actually ready to do the migration, right, you would extract from those 3 systems, you would understand what is a member, what makes a member unique, then maybe whether you can do it manually based on the volume, how many you have to look at, train a couple volunteers to come over on a weekend and spot check them and do that kind of work, or if it's a volume that it makes sense to hire out a company like Melissa Data Services or Libertas or a dozen other companies out there, you provide them with your rules of, here's what makes a member unique, a combination of phone number, email address, and last name, right? You give them the rules, they say, here, we do the merge for you, you give us 3 different file sets from your 3 different systems of record, they give you one at the end, and then maybe there's some that they don't quite follow the rules, but they can flag them for your manual follow-up to figure out how am I going to, which ones are maybe duplicates that didn't meet my rules, but based on looking at it, I can see that, oh, these 2 people are married, and I'll make this one record.
We're on a time crunch. This meeting will end in 3 minutes, but anybody who wants to stay, as long as you have if you have a copy of the slides and all the notes we made, and also a copy of this, which you don't have to have this. This is how to get $5 million commercial. If you have them, you can leave in 3 minutes. Yes, sir.
How are you identifying wealthy prospects, and how are you able to arrange appointments with them? Because I'm sure they're hit often by people.
Sure. There is no one answer to the question, and I'll be honest with you. When I met with this one wealthy donor in December of 2010 and got FaceTime, this is the same guy that Pat succeeded with. He was the 10th or 12th person that I tried to contact, and I'm still waiting for FaceTime with the rest of them. So the richer they have screens up. Everyone's always asking them for money. There's no magic bullet there. I go back to persistence. Okay? In Texas, probably everybody knows Mark Cuban, the Dallas billionaire, and the Dallas Mavericks, and so on. He hasn't responded to my phone calls yet. Gee, why not? I don't mind if I hear from his screen saying, what the hell are you calling about? I'll have a contact. I'll be in there even if I don't get him. But I can name another dozen millionaires in Texas, but it's a detail. Yes, Pat?
Frankly, the way to get there is to get to the point where people think you're big enough and successful enough that I'm going to start looking at you. So really that $100,000 donation that we got, that Wes worked on, it was because of the success we built up over 4 years to the point where it was unsolicited. We didn't go find the guy. Hey, see, you're doing good stuff, let's talk.
And if you're out there trying, it will be heard. I want to mention one thing, and I'll take any other questions, and then if you have one of these and one of those, please feel free to leave because we're out of time. One thing that Nathan mentioned and one thing that Jeff Neal mentioned this morning, and 4 or 5 of you were in that session, they both come down to one thing. Nathan had getting hit by a bus or leaving, equally horrible scenario, leaving for the Republican Party. And Jeff Neal expressed it differently, but they're both talking about institutional memory. If you have volunteers and they leave for any reason, you've lost a bunch. None of us are businesses. There's no succession plan in place like there is in a corporation. There are so many multiple points of failure along the line, but we're all at risk the larger we are. A CRM it's one of the things it addresses. We are too large, despite all our faults in LP, Texas. We cannot operate without a CRM anymore. And if you have just 400 members in your state, then you can. I'm not saying you should, but it'd be a future to look at. On the other hand, it's an easy decision. If a year from now, you have to look at what Texas is doing, and what I think is going to happen is our regular run-of-the-mill donations are doubling, tripling, quadrupling. You might want to take a look at that, unless you don't care about revenue increase. Thank you very much. Anybody that needs to stay with a question, do. If you don't have both of these things, please come up and get one, and thank you for attending.